Hello, I'm Hilton Super, the Vice Chairman of the Studium Group, and today I have the pleasure of speaking to Tanvi Bhatt, who's coach and strategist and a thought leader and CEO and founder of her company, Tanvi Bhatt International. Now, this is where we interview people who are challenging the world, people who are inspiring us with their achievements, their creativity, their acumen, and the use of technology. Now, in previous interviews, we have interviewed over 300 amazing people. They achieved more than 15 million views on YouTube. Now, this interview series on Cities ABC is in partnership with our platforms, agribusinesscouncil.org, a Web3 platform utilizing technology that employs the use of truth and trust through a unique corporate digital identity using blockchain and the deployment of data analytics, AI, and machine learning. Today, I'd like to introduce you to Tanvi. Tanvi, tell me, where are you?
Good evening. I am joining in from Bombay.
So you're founder of the Tanvi Bhatt International, which is a personal branding company in India, and you recognize as a personal branding expert for the CXOs, for the Economic Times Corporate Dossier. You've worked with the likes of LinkedIn, Deloitte, KPMG, Bank of America, Pfizer, Capgemini, Times Group, Mirinda Group, Tata Group, Reliance, to name a few. And you've actually spoken 3 times with TEDx, which I think is amazing. So tell us a little about your background and what was the journey like when you started in your career. And I understand you went to university in Delhi. So tell us a little about your childhood and then university and how you got into brand management.
So this was not the career plan as it usually is, right? I studied to become a scientist. I specialized in something called bioinformatics, which is a combination of biotechnology and information technology to unravel the secrets of genetics, proteomics, and life as we know it. Little did I know I would be terrible at coding, right? So I have 2 right brains and 0 left brains. So I realized I don't want to be mediocre and doing something that I'm obviously not even passionate about. I'm still very passionate about the biology and the biotechnology part of it, but the IT part of it, I just don't get it. Mm-hmm. So the next step naturally for an Indian kid is to do your post-graduation. Now, I didn't want to do my post-grad in the field of science or research, which I'd studied in my BTech. So MBA happened in branding. Like every engineer that comes out of India has to have that checklist. Oh, you've done your post-grad in MBA in, finance or branding or marketing or anything else. So MBA happened, realized I'm deeply passionate about branding and all things in terms of creative communication. So that really helped me understand my core strengths and what I'm really intuitively good at. So I fell in love with branding naturally in the 2 years of my B school, and I got placed with one of the biggest pharma companies in India owing to my science background. On the 5th day of my induction week, I happened to quit. It was my decision to quit, obviously. I didn't even consult my parents, which is a big thing in India, like you've done your BTech, you don't want to have a career in that industry, you've done your MBA, you're quitting your job on the 5th day. My parents were livid about it because I didn't even consult with them when I took that huge step. But that's a story for some other time, but it was just not meant to be. I think entrepreneurship was always my calling. So I am an accidental entrepreneur. This is not the plan even after quitting my campus placement job in the first week. But what my mentor told me during those days of introspection and frustration, actually, because I didn't have any opportunities on the horizon. I had just quit the job, which I really was a dream job for someone like me. So he told me that, what is that one thing in your life that has transformed your life in the last few years? I'm like, well, quitting my job while having 0 prospects on the horizon has definitely put me back to being dependent on my parents. But yeah, that's on a lighter note. I've been a student of public speaking for 21 plus years now. And that whole journey of learning how to express myself, how to convey my thoughts, how to be confident, how to slay the stage without being mortified by the fear of speaking and judgment and critique really helped me step into my own power as a human being and obviously as a professional. I did not learn that art to be a keynote speaker. That was not on the horizon. But the journey that I went through of learning the art of speaking really put me in a place that made me confident and ensure that I don't get faced by all those, 100, 200, 500 pairs of judgmental eyes that, are hooked onto you the moment you step on the stage. So that was a huge pet peeve for me. And the reason I became a speaker eventually in this industry was to teach people the power of communication, the power of expressing yourself, of sharing your thoughts, your ideas, ultimately that established into speaking about thought leadership. So my journey of being an entrepreneur began to teach people the art of public speaking, which evolved into personal branding as a coaching, consulting, and speaking service, which I ended up doing because nobody was doing this in India. And I wanted to build my own brand. So I don't have to go knock knock every time I need more business in terms of clients or organizations to hire me as an expert. So the journey of wanting to be a public speaking coach led me into the hallways of becoming a personal branding coach and obviously evolved into the journey of being a thought leadership strategist also, because that is ultimately at the core of anything that you want to put forth in the industry as your value proposition or your intellectual property.
And that's very interesting because, you emphasize the personal brand as a sort of a unique mosaic of different aspects. And when you go into a company and you work with the people in the company, the automatic default would be, okay, let's take the CEO, let's take the managing director, let's take the head of marketing and coach them through that process and turn them into a personal brand. But there's always that top of the hierarchy that one focuses on. And in previous conversation we've had, you mentioned that your philosophy and your approach is not necessarily just focusing on that pinnacle of a corporate. Can you explain that in a little bit more detail in terms of how?
So while this industry was non-existent in India, in the West, personal branding has been a thriving industry since 2008. My guru, William Aruda, initiated this whole philosophy of building your personal brand with his work at Reach, the organization that he's built over the last 22 plus years now. But in India, when I started speaking about this, the most beneficial target audience I found was obviously the top management, which is the CEOs, the entrepreneurs. Easier lot to convince that, okay, you need to build your brand, your identity, your visibility, your voice on social media platforms today over and above what you're doing. So both online and offline balance of building your presence is non-negotiable in today's day and age. So as a young B school graduate in 2012, when I began working in this industry, I was present and active on LinkedIn. And in fact, LinkedIn became a very powerful tool for me to get a lot of career opportunities that would have never happened to me if not for LinkedIn. So I could realize and understand the power of that platform. But the CEOs of the top 100 companies in India were not present on LinkedIn, were not active, were not sharing their knowledge, thoughts, wisdom, insights, perspectives to inspire and enrich the next generation. So that became the target audience obsession for me, at least in the early days. But eventually I realized that if the organization's entire intellectual property has to shift to a transcendental level of every employee, not just the CEO or the C-suite leaders, every employee has to start thinking like a thought leader. And that became my obsession in the next 5 years of my career, to really coach and help people understand how to shift their mindsets from being just a leader to a thought leader, because that's a skill nobody taught us.
Yeah.
In India.
How would you define thought leadership as a definition? How would you define it?
Wow, that's a great question, because thought leadership has been such a beautiful abstract artscape of everything that you want to showcase to the world what you're made of, right? Your core talent, your gifts, your wisdom. So for me, thought leadership is a beautiful mosaic of what you do better than others, what you do different than others, what you do novel than others, and what you do or what you offer, which has a unique signature, because it's a combination of your core expertise, your experiences of life, and the experiments that you've taken. So these four things, if you have a checklist, yes, I do A, B, C, D, that's when you are practicing thought leadership. Because it's a beautiful practice of three things coming together: your core expertise, experiments, and experiences of life. And when you have these three things come together in the work that you're doing, whether you're creating something, whether you're disrupting something, whether you're just as a leader or a CEO in the organization, also sharing the wisdom, the wealth, the knowledge that you have with your ecosystem, whether it's internally or externally, because the moment you take it externally and to the online world, you're amplifying not just your visibility, but your impact.
But the key here is that there's always a conflict between an individual and a corporate becoming or going through the process of thought leadership and engaging with an audience. It has to be aligned with the vision and the mission as well as
Absolutely.
the company. It needs to be and some form of alignment. You can't be offered a tangent to the corporate.
So true. I'm so glad you said that, because many times in my work with CEOs and CXOs or aspiring leaders who want to take these roles, they realize that they are in absolute disconnection with who they are, their core values, and what the organization stands for. So it's a very evident conflict of interest, which they realize that, they've never sat down and introspected to understand if their next 5 years of leadership trajectory is in alignment with what the organization stands for in terms of values, or how their work is valued in the organization also. So with those organizations, that there was a direct conflict of interest in who they were at a core level, your brand DNA, if that is not in alignment with your organization, you're not going to be able to give it your 200% as a leader. So the next decision, obviously, for them is to figure out a perfect alignment or a match for who they are and what organizations they can actually thrive in. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because leaders today have realized more organically that authenticity is non-negotiable. They could work for a year or two, and if it's a good paycheck, just survive those 2 years of growth or jumps that they get in their careers. But if they really want to thrive and they want to do it with a sense of higher purpose that they bring on the table, they will have to work with organizations whose purpose is in alignment with who they are and what they believe in.
I mean, but there's certain positions in companies that are outward looking and certain positions that are effectively functional within a company and inwardly looking.
True.
It's a bit of a challenge for somebody on the inward looking side to be that thought leader. How does that functional role within a company become a potential thought leadership role for an aspiring thought leader?
Great question. So thought leadership or personal branding is not just about being outward focused or using this as a strategy to build your profile externally in the industry. The philosophy with which I work, at least, is as a thought leader, when you're in the journey of building a personal brand, you are creating a body of work which is so unique to you that nobody can imitate that or replace that with another skill set. That's where the three things that I spoke about: the core expertise, the experiences that you've had as a professional and a leader, and the experiments that you've done in your life, personal, professional, social, spiritual, all. They all come together in that unique mosaic to create value. So it doesn't really matter if you are just inward focused as a leader or an external focused leader. The body of work that you will create that has your signature stamp on it will add value to the greater intellectual property of the organization. So for example, if you're a finance leader and you're bringing in thought leadership related to the work that you've done, and you have zero KRAs in being the brand ambassador of the organization, you will still continue creating stellar work in the organization with your hierarchies to inspire them, enrich them, create a new culture of how you are disrupting the way finance as a function has been operational in the organization, how we are setting up benchmarks, practices, or roadmaps of what a finance leader should do in this evolving era that we live in. What fintech is doing for every organization today, how you are bringing in your core expertise of finance, your visionary thought leadership of fintech and its impact on your organization, instilling a culture of thinking transcendentally. And that is important at an internal level also, not just about building the profile of yourself as a leader or the organization also as an external focused leader.
That's very interesting. In terms of the tools that people have in terms of expressing themselves, if you look at what's available, you talked about LinkedIn, but there are other social media and publishing platforms where you can contribute for nothing for most of them. Your uniqueness, your unique view in the world, your core expertise in that mosaic that you talked about. Can you give us an example of some of the methodologies that you can employ in that mosaic?
Sure, absolutely. I think LinkedIn is non-negotiable today for every profession who wants to focus on their core visibility, their value creation, and ultimately have that kind of vocal impact because of the expertise that they have and want to be seen as the go-to experts or authorities in the industry. Beyond that, again, there are multiple platforms, but you pick and choose the buffet of platforms that you have based on your industry that you're hailing from. For someone who possibly hails from a big four, starting a YouTube channel may not be the most appropriate way for them to build their presence brand, again, because they're employed somewhere and they may have a strict roster of do's and don'ts, what you can do as an executive. So you will have to play it strategically, smart, yet you'll have to be digitally savvy and present. So you can use platforms like LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, or Threads, again, where you can showcase who you are from your personality perspective, your professional knowledge and ecosystem of wisdom that you have, and the social impact or the spiritual impact of the work that you're doing as a person, as a leader, as a human being. So these three platforms are the absolute go-to platforms for you to be present, active, and engaging on. So tomorrow when people even Google you, you are being found on these platforms with hopefully relatable and sensible content that you've put out there, and you've not been politically incorrect, basically, to begin with, right? Because today, the sensitization of being politically correct on every platform, whether it's your personal views, your official views, is sacrosanct. You cannot bypass that anymore. For people who hail from relatively creative industries, let's take your example also, for instance, over here. You particularly don't hail from a creative industry, but this whole podcast that you have launched is brilliant in terms of not just creating original thought leadership driven content, but building your profile, visibility, influence, network across the globe when you connect with interesting people from different walks of life, right? Because the work that you're doing in Web3 and blockchain, while that is practicing thought leadership, there were possibly no opportunities for our roads to really connect and how we came together. There's a beautiful serendipity and an outcome because you are focused on creating signature brand of content, which is in alignment with the work that you're doing. So I strongly recommend for leaders who are not shy of putting themselves out there, especially on video modalities, to consider starting a podcast of their own based on their passion, profession, or social ecosystems that they want to contribute their voice towards.
But as we move into the digital transformation age, we effectively have an identity, but that identity now is becoming digital just as much as your email address is your digital identity. But now the content that you create by accessing various platforms to establish your digital identity becomes much, much more important for everybody. Everybody effectively has a digital identity. You have a digital identity, but what do you do with it? And what you do with it in the direction of the mosaic that you're talking about is imperative if you want to have a career that is progressive and impactful.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I've been saying this for the last 12 years of being in this industry now, that if you don't give people something fabulous to talk about you, then you will have to be okay with whatever they talk about you, right? So you have to really give them food for thought, which is putting your best foot forward, creating an identity which is in alignment with the next 5 years of your life, how you want to be seen in the industry, and not separate at where you are today. So we're looking at an aspirational leadership voice that you have to have in the industry, because not everyone is a thought leader. Not everyone is the CEO of the organization who is going to be looked up to, followed on the day zero when they launch. A lot of people don't even start doing this because they are just so conscious of the fact that I am not a leader or a thought leader today. Who is going to want to listen to me?
Yes.
And that's a huge challenge for more leaders than not to not take the step of leveraging these tools which are freely available today to help aspiring leaders to evolve into thought leaders. For example, if I, as a young 25-year-old kid, fresh out of B school, could leverage the power of internet, these professional platforms like LinkedIn, Twitter, and the blogosphere, which was a big thing back then, because we didn't have podcasts back then. If I could do it as a 25-year-old kid back then, today leaders have 20, 25 years of experience backing them. They're miles ahead of, someone like me. They just need the right roadmap, the right mindset, the right toolkit to really bring it all together, have strategic thinking, and have a content strategy to back the strategic thinking of the vision of what kind of thought leadership footprint they wish to leave behind.
Yeah, because that legacy remains all through.
Absolutely. Yeah. And not just offline today, online, more importantly.
Exactly. So, I mean, in terms of the apart from the social media platforms, you talked a little about blogosphere, which was a bit, and it's now become a little bit dated, the word blog. There are many platforms that one can contribute to.
Yes.
Medium, or Reddit, or all these other platforms. And then, of course, there's the mainstream media as well, that you can publish articles.
Right.
And stuff to. Give us a little example of the authorship and columnist roles that some of your clients have been using to great effect. Not the CEOs, I'm talking about people with aspirational brand building desires.
So there are three modalities which are non-negotiable today. I believe that you have to be present on where you're showcasing your thought leadership ideas and creative intellectual property that you're working on. One is having your own, I'm going to call it a newsletter on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn newsletters have become very popular in the last 12 months. The readership of blogs or articles on LinkedIn is really scaling up, with LinkedIn having crossed 1 billion users already. This second is, like you rightly said, media outlets which are relevant to the industry that you're in, whether it's Medium, whether it's Inc., whether it's Entrepreneur, whether it's websites or portals that are creating and publishing or curating thought leadership driven content around your industry also. There are so many portals today which are founded by brilliant, passionate leaders who want to be the one-stop resource for knowledge, wisdom, breaking news in the industry. So find out what are the top 5 blogs, media outlets, publications, which are digital first publications today, which are putting together amazing content around your industry, and reach out to them to offer guest articles or guest blogs, whatever that is accepted by them today. And third, you have to be in the game of becoming an authority in the industry. You have to build credibility, and that still comes in from the traditional media outlets. So even if you're not a CEO today, there are so many traditional media outlets today who are interested in publishing original thought forms, original thought processes of how industries across the world in the so-called world are constantly disrupting themselves, and how you as a leader in the making, a thought leader, as an emerging voice on that subject matter, are contributing to shaping the mindsets and the awareness quotient of fellow peers and leaders in the industry. So in whichever capacity you can get yourself featured, whether it's writing columns and articles in credible news media outlets, magazines, newspapers, pink papers based on your industry, and proactively pitching yourselves to these people with original content, which you've already published on the first 2 platforms, to showcase that, yes, you are someone who's already established as a voice, as a credible source of content and information on that subject matter, before you start going and pitching all these things to media outlets also, because they will always want to see some proof of concept in terms of what presence you already have online.
I mean, what you're advocating is everybody can be a thought leader.
Absolutely.
The sort of default perspective on that is if I want to be a thought leader, I need to hire a PR agency, a branding agency, and I'm going to pay them money and they're going to do all the work for me. They're going to take over my Twitter account. They're going to help me publish this. That is what I call sort of 101 old school.
Absolutely. And possibly if you're a CEO, you could afford to do all those things. But if you're not a CEO who doesn't have those resources at their disposal, or the companies are not sponsoring this for them, you can still play and very well win the game of thought leadership and building your personal brand in the industry in the new age way, because it's all about the right strategy, the right content mix that you choose, the right platforms that you choose, and the right network that you build while doing that. Because the network is going to give you the next big opportunity that is going to be your game changer.
Absolutely. And the tools that one has at disposal is understanding, and perhaps you can explain that normally in the traditional way of doing things, you would contribute some article to a digital platform and you would then do some form of SEO, which is search engine optimization on that, and have various keywords. And then you would actually pay the platforms to amplify that, your voice, but there are other ways of doing it where you don't have to pay somebody to do that. You can create the content, you can position it with the right keywords. And then in social media, you are able to amplify that message with the appropriate tags, hashtags, and people within your network that you want to communicate to include within that content. Can you elaborate on that in terms of how you would help aspiring thought leaders today?
The first thing I look at when any client approaches me for building their brand as a thought leader is what category creation are we focused on? This quantity is that, having a niche worked. Because today niches are also overpopulated with 1,000 leaders saying that, hey, I belong to this niche. So when you've identified your niche, the next step for someone is to then figure out the category that they're going to create in that niche. I'll give you a brilliant example. One of my absolute favorites of how Tim Ferriss created a brand new category of disrupting productivity or time management. He was not the first voice on the scene to speak about time management or how to be more productive, but he created a cult following. He created a whole category of how you can minimize the time that you're investing and maximize your productivity in his entire brand universe of 4 work week to begin with. And then, the whole brand legacy followed from there. So that is a stellar example of category creation. Now, not everyone is an aspiring author. Not everyone is here to write books or become a keynote speaker. Having said that, category creation of the vision that you're chasing. How are you disrupting or challenging the status quo in your industry with your expertise, with your ideas, thoughts, or analysis of the industry that you're doing, and presenting those ideas in small, incrementally palatable way? Because every big idea is first going to be ridiculed, right? Before being rejected, before being opposed. Ultimately, when people have seen the proof of concept, it gets celebrated in the industry. So how do you map that entire journey with your storytelling, your narratives, your content, your persistent championing and evangelizing of the larger than life vision that you are espousing for your industry, whether it's via products, services, or just a brand new way of thinking or doing something in your life, regardless of what industry you're from? That becomes a first step for any leader to be obsessed about. Because if you have not differentiated yourself at that level of thinking like a thought leader, you're just adding to the clutter. There are more than enough influencers on LinkedIn today who are chasing the number of likes, who are chasing the number of reposts and shares, dishing out generic level wisdom. Are you sure you want to add to the noise, or you want to have an absolute novel point of view, perspective, and a vision that you have created for your organization, your business, your industry, your society? It really doesn't matter which of these industries you want to contribute to. You could be a CEO and you could just be speaking about a social cause that is very close to your heart. That could be your thought leadership category creation of how to do something differently. For example, if you could be a CEO of a Big Four, as an example, if you can take over, who's absolutely passionate about access to safe, potable water in India. And he's doing everything, or she's doing everything in his or her might to ensure that this level of thought leadership from his legacy of understanding the industry dynamics and his passion, which is fueled by his purpose of helping the common Indian man to have access to healthy, hygienic, potable water in India, has the platform it deserves, has momentum, has contribution, has funds collection, and the impact is also happening at grassroots level. So this is just an example of how you can ensure that regardless of what industry you hail from, you create a voice around an idea, vision, or a change or an impact that is really close to your heart, regardless of the work that you are doing professionally also. And once you've built enough momentum to take that idea into a movement, then it really doesn't matter what platforms you choose, what modalities of content you choose, because you've already done the groundwork in differentiating your voice, creating a body of work in terms of your content ideas, blogs, videos, tweets, articles to create that momentum, because everyone consumes content in different modalities today. Majority, around 65% of people today are consuming content online, prefer video over text. So if you're obviously wanting to get the right eyeballs and be a part of that impact, you should be looking at tools that are going to help you do that. You cannot remain old school saying that I'm not comfortable with video and I'm not going to be a part of that revolution. So once you've got absolute clarity about what category you want to create of the change and the transformation, then you choose the right tools, modalities of content, and then you choose the right platform based on who is your target audience. Where are they active? Where are they engaging? Where are they going to connect with you and contribute towards the voice or the collective voice that you want to ensure is building along with your own singular efforts?
You use a very interesting word, and something we haven't discussed is engagement. Just because you say something, or publish something, or write something, or doesn't mean it gets read by everybody. It's a little bit of an art where you need to engage not only with your very tight circle, but you need to engage in a broader circle to perpetuate your voice. And what's one of the things I see a lot is that the lack of engagement and the persistence in engagement doesn't exist.
Absolutely. So what I recommend, there's an Indian philosophy of karma that I hope even you are aware of. What you give, you get, and how, right? So whatever you put forth in the universe returns to you multifold. And there couldn't be a more beautiful metaphor to explain why you don't get engagement other than karma. I recommend every leader to, before you even start putting content out there, publishing or being active in terms of creating thought leadership-driven content, is to first expand their network and visibility by engaging with the content of people that they would ideally want should engage with their content eventually. I think another beautiful philosophy which comes to my mind is of Jab, 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 Right Hook, a brilliant book by Gary Vaynerchuk, right? Which says that you have to add value, you have to add value, you have to add value at least 3 times before even expecting. And there's no surety even then, before even expecting that someone will add value back to you, will reciprocate the gesture. So the biggest mistake people are doing today is they're publishing content and just, waiting, like sitting there, like people will like, people will comment, people will engage, but nobody's going to do that if you've not taken the initiative of adding value to their content by liking, sharing, commenting, appreciating. There's so many ways of doing that today, whether it's on LinkedIn or off LinkedIn as well. So that's the Karmanomics 101 is what I call it. First, you have to give out in the universe what you expect to be returned to you.
Yeah. So we've gone through the process in the mosaic of talking about people engaging themselves in the digital world with their digital identity and their personality, their vision, their mission, or whatever. They then create the content on the various platforms. They then make it relevant. They then position it correctly in their network, and then they engage.
Right.
That's sort of like a, correct me if I'm wrong. And then there are other platforms where it is now, and I know you've done a lot of work in terms of the art of public speaking and stagecraft, because now you are going to be not only digital, but now you're going to be personal. You're going to be communicating.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about that stagecraft approach.
Stagecraft is inevitable as a skill that you must learn and eventually master if you're serious about inspiring more people at scale. If you have brilliant ideas and if you're just going to have a digital only approach, then that human touch, that brand of inspiration that you potentially can be known for, be loved for, be celebrated for offline in the real world is not going to happen for you. If you're going to shy away, like I said earlier, from using video as a platform or using actual stage time as a platform or as a medium to evangelize your ideas, you will not be able to create that level of amplified impact in real time in the world. You'll always be limited to a microcosm of the digital ecosystem, people who know you. But real change, as we've seen, happens on the grassroots level when you are speaking, interacting, engaging, transforming lives, which begins with speaking on scale because you're addressing one-to-many. And then depending on the level of work that you do or the industry that you're in, taking that promise of message and translating that into sustainable results for your target audience. Because if you are going to be speaking as a thought leader, there are multiple modalities of speeches, right? You can do keynote speeches, you can do master classes, you can offer coaching programs. All these have an element of speakership entailing it. Keynotes are for mindsets. You're helping people elevate or shift their mindsets in that 1 hour of window that you have with them. Next step is to go a little deeper and have a masterclass kind of a model, which you take people deeper into the value proposition or the thought leadership or the big idea that you are espousing, and you help them understand how it's going to be adopted and adapted to their ecosystem. And ultimately, it's either coaching or products or services or experiences that you want to send to them that will help them see massive change in their respective lives, which is directly linked to the big idea that you're promising as a thought leader.
Okay. So one element here in terms of going through the process, which could help you a lot, is the idea of mentorship, i.e. having a mentor in the beginning, I think is
Absolutely
crucial. So can you explain a little bit about how that process of mentorship works? And should everybody have a mentor?
Everyone should have a mentor. In fact, mentorship is something which is very close to my heart. Not only I mentor people, but I ensure that every year at least there are 3 mentors that I empanel, so to speak, for my own, personal disruption. And in the last year, one of my closest, most beloved mentor that I found was a gentleman called Craig Valentine. He's a kick-ass speaker and a storyteller, one of the best in business. And I worked with him last whole year because I've always been a very hands-on speaker. I never learned the art of speaking from a mentor over these years. I did it online, by seeing the best in business, learning from them, secondary learning, but primary learning was something that I'd never done because then I started practicing everything that I was learning offline. But storytelling was a skill that was missing in my forte. And that's when I enlisted a mentor for myself last year. And last whole year, we worked on different aspects of storytelling, whether it's keynote speaking or coaching or designing workshops where storytelling becomes an integral part of communicating your value, your vision, your passion, your purpose, and your big idea of thought leadership. So mentorship is non-negotiable for every leader who wants to disrupt themselves, because mentorship is not something that is going to be nominated by the organization for you, especially if you're a leader in the corporate. Entrepreneurs usually take this proactive approach and responsibility of finding coaches for themselves, finding experts, finding business consultants, or finding mentors from their own industry. We've been there and done that. But usually corporate leaders fail in finding mentors proactively. They usually limit their personal and professional growth to the learning and development programs which are offered by the corporate for them. So stepping out of that cookie cutter approach of, okay, as a leader at this level, you should only be learning ABC skills to transcend to the next level. You decide what's your next 5-year telescopic vision of personal mastery that you want to embody, and find 3 mentors in a calendar year who've been that, done that, who are ideally in different areas of their life. A mentor should be in one area of life at least 2 to 3 years ahead of you. In another area of life, at least 5 to 7 years ahead of you. And in another area of life, at least 10 to 15 years ahead of you. Because you're getting diverse visions of how these people in different walks of life in my industry are managing their life, their career, their brand, and every other dimension that you are interested in outgrowing.
This is very interesting. In terms of your future vision, looking ahead with technology that we have today, we've got quite a few platforms that people are utilizing in terms of their communication, of who they are, what they're doing, and what they think, and what they feel. There's public speaking, there's personal branding, then leading to thought leadership. With the use of technology today, when we are now going from the digital space into the digital 3D space where we can have avatars of ourselves and things like the future trends, very ambitious. So, we've been talking for nearly an hour now. Your future vision, how would you coach people, your clients, through that journey from your mosaic of personal branding, public speaking, thought leadership, as new technology comes of age?
Fascinating to even start thinking about it. I think the first skill, like I said earlier, I would reiterate on, is helping these leaders to think like a thought leader first. That is non-negotiable because nobody is doing that for them. So that is an absolute first step, that you have to start integrating the skill and the mindset of a thought leader in the industry, whether you are an entrepreneur or a CEO or an aspiring CEO. Once that is done, then the next step is to start speaking like a thought leader internally in the organization. Externally, when I say externally, they're twofold: online and offline. And each of these 3 elements are non-negotiable if you're looking at massive global impact as a thought leader. Over the next 10 years, I think we've already seen this being demonstrated by fashion houses, right? Of augmented reality, or projecting personas or avatars of people, whether it's actual person or even 3D avatars that we have today, thanks to ChatGPT, where they're delivering content, where they're delivering experiences. Correct. So today, whatever limitations we have as speakers and thought leaders of not being able to be on more stages and more platforms simultaneously across the world will absolutely change. So the amplification of your reach, your visibility, your ideas being disseminated in real time, whether it's via your, augmentation reality, or avatars doing it digitally as well, right, is going to change the whole experiential economy of inspiration, of transformation, of thought leadership, of speaking, of coaching, of retreats, of offsites, because you'll be able to be present on multiple locations, possibly at the same time, with the help of these technologies. So I think it's a very exciting time for the business of thought leadership, as we call it, this industry where you're either knowledge leaders or thought leaders, and you are sharing your intellectual property with the world to help them do something better, different, and in a unique way than it's been ever done before. So with the augmentation of tools of AR, VR, and of course, avatar creation, the potential and possibilities for increasing the opportunities to create impact and income, both for thought leaders, is going to at least shoot up by 100x in the next 10 to 15 years.
Tanvi, that sounds so exciting. And thank you very much for that wonderful future vision.
Thank you.
In terms of thought leadership for everybody. As the founder of the Tanvi Bhatt International company, how do people get in touch with you?
Everyone can get in touch with me very simply on my website. It's my full name, that's Tanvi. And if they want to get in touch with me personally, then just drop me a hi on LinkedIn.
That's fantastic. Tanvi, thank you very much indeed for the most wonderful hour.
Here.
really, really enjoyed talking to you about the journey to be a thought leader. And it's not for a few, but it's for everyone. So thank you very much indeed for your time.